isn't that a great sample reel? I think it's amazing, and it's just a picture of the kinds of footage that will be in a full-length documentary. And feature documentaries are the kind of work that I've done in the past, and why Gabriel asked me to help him a little bit and act as executive producer. So what I wanted to talk about a little bit is how, and actually in a way, I've been set up very nicely by Judith and Erica and Catherine. Judith said, how do we make these things accessible to the future? And film is one of the most amazing ways because it immerses you in a topic in a way that you can't just get from looking at the painting. You get a lot, but you can get more. You've seen a little bit of it here. And Erica said, if only we had films of painters from the 19th century, we would have that additional level. And the fact that we have this 1948, late 40s footage, black and white footage in there is such a gem that Gabriel has found, that really allows us to travel even a little bit further back in time. But so how do we get this film out there to the broader public? We've already received interest from the Smithsonian American Art Museum, the Danforth, the MFA, the ICA here in Boston, and other institutions who would like to show this film. So we get to show this to a couple hundred people at a time, maybe over several nights, maybe more than a couple hundred. We're going to seek a public television broadcast, and that can lead to even bigger numbers of people. But actually, in a way, those things are kind of sexy because they're screenings and premieres and television broadcasts. But to my mind, one of the most important things is that there's a broad educational market in art and art history departments at every university in this country. That's where people are really studying art, and for us to bring this to those people to use as a teaching tool is really a wonderful opportunity. In that kind of academic setting, a film like this will live for decades, really. So it might seem like this is a one-time thing, but it's not at all. It's really going to be a tool for many, many years and informing discussions about American art for a generation. We're not always presented with the opportunity to have this kind of impact, actually. I think, to bring a story from the rabbi at my temple said this weekend, we're in the middle of a capital campaign, that it's actually a gift to have that opportunity. And I actually agree with her. I think that to have this opportunity to tell this story to many more people, it's a gift to be able to contribute to it, and that's what I think of when I work on this, pro bono, by the way. So that's really what motivates me. It's an opportunity to bring this story to a lot more people. And let's also not forget how fortunate we are to be so closely connected to great artists. Arthur and Gabriel himself were connected to the art and to the people. And it's a wonderful opportunity we have to bring this to a broader world and to give back to the Boston arts community. It should be, and it will be, a living and inspiring piece of work, the film, for generations. I think it's an opportunity to broaden and deepen the conversation about this movement, this art movement, which we've heard a bit about from Erica, Catherine, and Judith tonight. As a producer, I look at this and with a budget of about $280,000, it's actually a very small amount of money compared to some of the films I've produced, which have been in the $1 to $2 million range. So it's actually a very efficiently run production. And I think that's important to know because every dollar that's raised is really going to go right onto the screen and be presented to people. So it's a good investment, I think, and it will, I believe, have a strong impact. And finally, I think we should take back a little bit of expressionism from New York. You know, let's put it back here in Boston where it started. And if I had my Red Sox hat with me, I'd put it on right now. I think it's important for Boston to tell this part of the story. And thank you very much again for coming out tonight.
you, Eric. I forgot my Red Sox hat. I mentioned before that I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for many people in this room, many supporters of this film, my wonderful girlfriend Tunda, who's here to help today, and again, I'm really happy to meet the new faces in the room today who are interested in the film and joining the supporters as well. I also couldn't have come this far without the generous in-kind help and services from the film and video community and the art community of Boston. And I noticed that when you have a great project, people are just amazingly generous and want to get involved, and I really appreciate that more than I can even say. I can't stress that enough. So I just want to talk a little bit about where we are with production. So far, we've raised about $135,000. To bring the project to where it is right now, and that includes shooting all of the footage, over 200 hours worth, believe it or not, and archiving over 1,000 images of my father's life's work and photos and news clippings. We've also worked very hard on the branding of the project and the content-rich website, the sample reel that you just saw. There's many different versions of that reel that we've edited, a social media outreach campaign, promotions, and all the things you need to do in 2015 to make a movie these days. It's not just shoot with a camera, it's a whole social process. But all of this work has laid the groundwork for the post-production or the final editing of the film. That's the only thing we have left to do to complete the movie, is to edit all of this content into a great 1.5 hour finished movie. So the film is at a crucial turning point right now. And we also have some of the leading Boston post-production specialists. We're talking to them about editing the film. I won't give you a list, but some of them have been working on Oscar-nominated documentaries, great music composers, and so on. So right now, in order to start editing this film into a finished movie, the only thing stopping us is funding. And I'm here today to reach out to our current and future supporters collectively to help us reach our funding goal to finish the movie right now of $150,000. And one of the champions of this film and a great supporter of the film and a lifelong friend of my father's and a collector of his work is here today, Carol Klein. I really appreciate that you came out, and I'm going to hand it off to her to say a few words. Thank you very much.
I've been told by Gabriel that I'm a major supporter of this film, and I have done it for a number of reasons. One is that I really believe that the Boston School has been neglected. My husband and I married in '45. Arthur and I go back to the 6th and 7th grade, when we were the best Latin students. That's why we were such good friends. And then when Arthur won the traveling fellowship, I bought that painting, not because he was my friend, but I realized that I had to own Arthur's paintings because they were exceptional. And many of the things you saw here I have bought from Arthur. For years I would ask him if he would sell me something, and his favorite comment was, it was not resolved. So one of the paintings you hear out there is a drawing of his girlfriend. He had on his wall until last year, and I asked him every year if I could buy it, and he said it wasn't resolved. And this year he said, it's resolved, so I bought it. So this is Arthur Polonsky at his best. But I want to tell you another thing about our life. Jack and I were married in 1945, and Jack was an engineer and I was a classics major. And from that day that we married, every Saturday we walked on Charles Street. We know Boris Mirsky, we knew every one of those artists. And subsequently, I think I think we probably, I know most of Arthur's art, and many of them I've had in my house in Maine that I've tried. Some don't work, but we have a number of them. Arthur painted one painting that's spectacular for our, we have this big farm barn kind of siding, and I said, Arthur, will you do a little painting for me? The next thing I got was a painting about 30 feet high, 2 panels, and he was supposed to make it very simple, but Arthur doesn't know how to do anything simply. So it ended up with pine trees. We have a 39 acres of farm land, and Arthur somehow, never seeing it, had captured the whole atmosphere of Maine. So this is very important to me because I think the Boston School has been totally ignored. I mean, in Maine you have the Algonquin School, you have Monhegan, you have Prouts Neck, you have everybody, and then in down at Provincetown you have tremendous amount of different schools. The biggest one in the 50s being Hans Hofmann now. So I think it's time that I think the world will recognize this is a great school, and I think they'll recognize that every one of those artists, many of whom I know. Oh, and I did buy a number of Aronsons too, so I do know the artists. So I want to hope that what I'm asking you to do tonight is, and this is the second time in my life I've ever asked anybody for money. The first time was in 1950 when the Combined Jewish Philanthropies asked me to raise money in Concord, Mass, where there were 10 Jewish families, 9 of them did not want to be Jewish. So I collected exactly $10, and that was ours. So this is the second time. I'm hoping that you will recognize the greatness of this school and help out.
Thank you, Carol. I appreciate that very much. And Eric and I are going to answer any questions that you have before we head over and do a tour of Herb's amazing collection. Herb and Mary Lou, excuse me. So does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask about the film or anything else? Mary?
Question. So let's say you got all the funding you need today. How long would it take for you to complete the film?
It should take about 12 months. It would be about 2 or 3 months of doing rough cuts and preparing the footage, and about 6 months to turn all this content into a multi-layered story with a really high-end editor that would be working under my direction. And then there's another 2 months or so of finishing and picture correction and audio correction and mastering.
Can I add a little? I just wanted to add that the significant difference between a dramatic film and a documentary is, with a dramatic film, of course, you go in most of the time with a script and very clear dialogue and action. You know exactly what's going to happen. With a documentary, it's almost the reverse. You go and you film hundreds of hours of footage, and then you have to find the story. You have to find the narrative in it. So the editor really becomes a critical piece of telling that story. And I mean, we're blessed in Boston that we have some really great editors, a couple of whom I've worked with. So we have the opportunity to hire somebody who can really find the story. Now, we know pieces of the story. We're not starting, obviously, from scratch here. But to really create a compelling narrative over the course of 80 or 90 minutes to tell a feature, a big story, and put that on the screen. And that's really what the editor of a documentary does, is they sift through hours and hours and working with the director, and others, will probably have some small screenings at various times to get audience reaction, and some of you hopefully will be able to attend and critique. We'll listen to some of the things you say, but not all of them. Anyway, that's what makes a documentary, that period of time, it takes that time and effort to really tell the story. Questions about since we have Erica, Catherine, and Judith here, we can also talk about the period and what the MFA is doing, what various museums are doing around this. That's certainly open to discussion as well.
No, any other questions about the story of the film or the production or?
Can you tell us a little bit about the vastness of Arthur's painting collection? I mean, I'm really intrigued that there are so many pieces, it sounds like.
Yes. Well, I can safely say there's many, many thousands of drawings, prints, and etchings, possibly over 10,000 in that house, I would guess. Every time I think I'm done filming them, he'll say, I have a few more on the 3rd floor, let's go up, and big portfolio, more stories, and I have to film again. So, and there's many dozens of paintings. Of course, a lot of them have been bought over the years, but I don't have an exact number. But I had a photographer come over and photograph all of them for the movie at high resolution, and there were certainly many dozens of paintings and color paintings on oil paintings on canvas, and also paintings on paper, and so forth. There's a large inventory, I guess I could say. Yeah. Yes.
I'm interested in the role that your dad will play in the final cut.
Well, there's a saying in documentary filmmaking, which is don't ever let the subject see the movie till it's done. But I tried to do that at the beginning, but I got weak and I let him see it. He's been great. He's really opened his home and his life and allowed me to come in with the camera. So I think what's important to him is that people see his work, and that's what matters. I'm trying my best to include as much of that. And also, there's some misconceptions about the sort of meaning behind his work. The critics have had misconceptions over the years, and he has some amazing explanations of what he intended with some of the work as a visual. As a piece of artwork, just from a visual aspect, and also as the meaning or the so-called story behind it. I think those are the things that matter to him. The biographical stuff, he's leaving that up to me. Yes. Oh.
You clearly have enough material both in Arthur's life and interviews and his work to make a movie of 100 hours.
Yeah.
But I know there's a lot of talk tonight about also bringing to the public the whole Boston Expressionist story.
Yeah.
And I didn't get much of a sense of that in the trailer. Is this sort of representative of what you see the movie being, or do you think the longer movie would have more about the other artists?
It will be more. There'll be a larger emphasis on that in the film. It's a national emanation of his life. I mean, it's part of who he is. So in a way, I can't avoid including that in the story. Again, this is a pretty rough sampling, so you'll see more of that. I interviewed so many of the key people from that era, from all the different aspects, as I mentioned, the people in this room, the Judith Bookbinder who wrote the book, and my father's firsthand accounts are really fascinating, and it's a broad way of telling that story. Hi, Liz. Thank you for coming. Yeah.
I'm wondering whether, do you see this as a comprehensive sort of encyclopedic retrospective of Dad, or is where you're actually going to include images of works of art that are owned by other people in addition to what is in his home, or is it more about those that the works that he resides with?
It's going to be both, and I'm thrilled that Herb, before you showed up today, Herb allowed us, my photographer Daniel here took some great high-resolution pictures of the David Aronsons and the Hyman Blooms and the Carl Zerba, who was my father's teacher at the museum school, and he's allowing us to use them in the film, so that'll be really helpful to tell that broader story of that circle of artists, and they're all connected. So.
Are you filming images of paintings that are of Dad's paintings that are owned by others?
Yes, again, these are owned by.
Those are owned by us, but what
Yeah.
about other just average collectors, like the Kleins?
Yes, I've already, the Kleins fall into the same category as Mr. Gray. I photographed their whole collection and filmed interviews over there, so they have a wonderful collection of my father's, many pieces. And there's some others, I have to think for a minute. It's been a lot of shooting, but yes.
So that's making it a great teaching tool, another layer of teaching.
Yes, the film will be a great educational resource about this whole history of art and this whole circle of artists. And I have some of these artists in the film. John Wilson, who unfortunately passed away recently, did a wonderful interview when I started the film. and Georgiana Nyman Aronson and her son Ben, and many others, and of course former students of my father's. So we have the larger story in the content of the film.
Can I add something?
Sure.
Also, it's quite likely, in fact, I can probably say certain, that there will be other resources, video resources, where not every interview or piece fits into the film, to tell the story succinctly in a way that really moves the narrative along. You might have great interviews which you put up on the website, or they're DVD extras, or now they're not on DVD, but they're still extras. So there's a way to present that kind of content to people. It sort of amplifies the educational resource that this trove of hundreds of hours of footage will become. So it will be a film, but it will also have web resources and additional resources that are available, video and probably stills, I would imagine, as well.
I also wanted to add, Catherine French, who's here today, also included some images of work that's owned by the Danforth for inclusion in the film. So
And I think I gave you the catalog that we did. So we had high-res images,
Yeah.
everything that appeared in that catalog.
the catalog that we see here today. Yes. Does anyone else have any more questions? I think we're good. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate again that everyone came out, and I'd love to be able to present this project to such a wonderful audience of people that have connections to my father and connections to the film. And I hope you got as much out of it as I have. I really appreciate that you came. Thank you very much. Before we go further, I'd like everyone to, hang out for a minute, and then we're going to move over down the hall to Herb's place for the art tour of his paintings.
There's still plenty of food here.
There's still food, so take your time and mingle and eat, and then we'll head over shortly.